Okay, so what I'm going to try to do, we're going to try to put together a package here where hopefully what we have will be valuable for both the veteran throwers, but also will be valuable for those who are kind of just getting started. And it's not to say whether we're trying to cover every base here, but for those who are veteran throwers, this might be a different way of looking at things. If you've been looking and kind of stuck in a rut like for a bit and just kind of using the same approaches, and those getting started, it might provide a little bit of a framework for you to get your kind of throw programming going. Okay, so here's the basic idea. You have to be a throwing athlete first, a discus thrower second, and then a discus thrower of a very specific weight discus third. Okay. Now, what do I mean by this? If I were to ask you in a conversation, what did you throw this week? And you were to say to me, I threw 37 meters. What that tells me is that you are focusing on one specific discus weight and you're focusing on the distance that you can throw that. Now, that is one way to go about it. But it's probably smarter to look at this from a holistic approach, which is you have to be a throwing athlete first. There's lots of things to be learned from throwing different kinds of implements. And I don't mean you should throw shot because you're throwing disc. I mean throwing anything. You're walking down the street, you throw a stone. You pick up a stick, you throw it. There are things to be learned through that process. You throw javelin, you throw discus, you throw hammer, you throw weight, you throw shot. There's different things to be learned from each one of those disciplines. And that's not to say you have to compete in everything. But remember that you're trying to create a system. You're trying to create a model. After and when you ask the body to respond in a particular way, so you create what are called catalysts. A catalyst inspires the body to make a change of some sort. And you want it to change in a way that's going to benefit your throwing. So all sorts of different throwing does this for you. All sorts of different weights do this for you as well. Now, once you get past that idea of the throwing athlete, you then have to apply that to a very specific discus technique. Now, that technique is not dependent on the weight of the implement. You should be trying to throw discus technique in a whole bunch of different ways with a whole bunch of different implements. That way you know your technique is solid regardless of what's in your hand. And then finally, you should look at your specific competition weight really as just a way of testing to see how all of that is coming together. Okay, so that's what I mean when we say you're a throwing athlete first, you're a discus thrower of many different things second, and then you are a specific athlete of a specific discus weight third and third finally. Okay. Now, the training topic is actually a really big one. And we're going to set that aside because that's not really the focus of today. The focus of today is really more of a technical one and how to build your technical model. So we'll have that conversation another time. We'll have maybe another session for that. Let's just move on to the techniques. So what I'm going to show you what a model that I think is very appropriate for masters throwers. And the reason I think it's appropriate for masters is because it takes advantage of the things that we should be training in general as we age, which is we should be training mobility and some basic power elements along with range of motion. That's not to say that we don't build strength, and that's not to say that we don't build specific power. But by training in this way, I think, and by adopting this model, I think we can apply that to the other events as well. It would be nice to be able to compete in more than one event. So if your training applies to several different events, then it's going to help you in several different events and you can enjoy yourself in several different events. This model also takes advantage of radius. Your radius over time doesn't change a whole lot. Yeah, we get a little bit shorter. Your spine compresses and, we say we're a certain height, but really we're not as tall as we used to be. But the other model, I'm going to show you two models. The other model more takes advantage of maximum speed and power. And both of those things decrease over time. That's not to say we don't try to train them, but if you are using a technique that relies solely on those two things, you're going to find over time, you're going to get a much bigger drop off relative to this other technique that I'm going to show you. Okay, so I'm going to show you two different athletes. I'm going to show you a video of John Powell. John Powell, fantastic discus thrower from the 80s. He is definitely a big speed and power guy. He relies on huge amounts of athleticism and huge amounts of strength and power at the shoulder. As opposed to a more recent athlete who is Daniel Stahl. Daniel Stahl is more of a range athlete, more of a radius guy, and you'll see some distinct differences between those two throws. Now, these two throws that I'm going to show you, they are both about the same distance. They're about 66 meters. So, needless to say, that's none of us. But it will give us the opportunity to see two different techniques, one of which I would suggest we adopt, the other one that we kind of need to get away from a little bit. Okay. What I want you to look for is the end position. So you see the back of the throw gets to the center of the circle, and then from this point, you'll see him push, push, push. Then he will get kind of to the front. And then at this point right here, that's when the arm moves. And the arm moves relative to the body. So it's almost like he throws across his body at this point. Now, why is that important? Why is that a significant item in the throw? Well, it's important because you have got to be incredibly powerful at the shoulder in order for that to work. Okay, so at this point, you will see his shoulder hinge. So you will see him go from 90 degrees and then the shoulder starts working. Now, why is that important? Because you've got to have an incredibly strong and powerful shoulder for that to work. Not just for the 2 kilo disc, with any disc in your hand. And as a matter of fact, as you get older and older, as that power starts to leave you and you're only left with radius, even with nothing in your hand, you're going to have limited speed in that range. So as a result, this worked really well for him. By the way, both of these throws, John Powell's throw and Dan Stahl's throw, are the same distance. Okay, so I'm going to keep playing this through. And you see his arm cuts across his body right there. Okay, you're going to see the above view, the stuff out of the back. The stuff out of the back is the back. He gets to right here, and then the arm comes through relative to his shoulder. Well, that shortens that radius, and although he's a snappy guy, he's not snappy forever. So what you see here, this is me kind of demoing that arm coming across. Now, this is the typical way that if you learned when you were young, this is what we were told, is that you get to the front and then you kind of whip it across the front. Not necessarily the case. Now, so here we see Daniel Stahl. So Daniel Stahl, very, very different look to his throw. Watch this. So what you notice in Stahl's throw is he gets to the front of the circle, and as a result, the entire body makes a rotation. So he uses the pivot of his entire body and the radius all the way across, including his chest. So watch, he's throwing his entire body all the way forward. Now again, why do I think this is a better model for masters? I think it's a better model for masters because if we work on mobility, that's going to do double duty. If you're doing other events, or say you want to be able to be spry in the winter when you're jumping over snowbanks, you want to be mobile. It doesn't matter how strong your chest is, unless of course your plan is once you fall down to be able to do a good push-up to get yourself back up. So here's the idea that you need to start developing this feel of a rotation. Yeah, well, this is Robert Harding's technique, but with the addition of the German release. And the German release is just a little bit tougher and it requires very, very specific strength. So the German technique, which is what Harding uses, it's not that this thing is all that different. They just have a very, very specific strength method of developing strength in the final push, in the power position. Okay, so what you see here, I'm just trying to use that radius to show you the radius off of that left shoulder. Okay, so the first one was just a pull across, but what you see here is that shoulder should really never come in front of the body. The arm should never go in front of the chest all the way through release. Now, we realize this is going to be a change in philosophy for some of us because we are just so used to that idea of the block. But the block doesn't actually have to happen the way that we think it does. And as a matter of fact, if you block too much for us, it actually shuts the right leg down. Okay? So there's the basic idea of what we're trying to do. What we're going to try to do is build a model that will work for what we've got left out of our body and what we can still develop when we're older. Okay? So, two things that you need to... Oh, sorry. The idea also, if you remember, since we're doing 80s anyway, the Karate Kid, the drum technique. So Mr. Miyagi shows young Daniel the spinning drum, and the idea that if you spin the bottom of the drum, that the arms of the drum flip around. That's what you're trying to do here. Since your hips don't have to move all that fast for your hands to be moving fast, really the idea is spinning from the feet. Okay? When I say blocking too much, Michelle, I mean the idea that we need to stop so that the discus will leave. So we don't have to stop when we release. Matter of fact, if you look at Stahl's the end, he doesn't stop even a little bit. Where is he? There he is. His body doesn't stop hardly at all. Matter of fact, just a tiny little bit. That left side stops a bit, but then keeps on going. So the idea of a block is that we hit at the end and then we follow through. Two things that we can do to build more speed on the throw. One is that we can get some speed from the back of the circle. And the other thing we can do is we can do something called creating separation. Now, this is one of those things that when you're younger, it's like, okay, we're spending all of our time building separation. What that actually means is we are trying to drive the hips so that it creates some torque with your back, so that your back eventually reaches the end of its range of motion and snaps through because it's afraid of being ripped apart. Now, that's not going to work for us anymore because of two things. One, it relies on a big range of motion, which we are reducing every year we throw. And the second thing is that it hurts a lot and can cause a lot of injuries. So I'm not saying don't try to create separation. I'm saying don't worry about it as much as you might if you threw when you were younger. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about in creating separation because you didn't throw when you were younger, don't worry about it. It won't make a difference because what I'm going to show you will develop enough speed anyway. Okay. All right. So the warm-up that I'm going to show you, this is, and you'll see in different places because I kept forgetting to do pieces of my warm-up and then I go back and film again and then go back and film again and things like that. So I'm going to run it in its entirety. So there's two things that you need to be developing here. You need to get your body ready to throw, but you also have to get yourself ready to apply the technique. You do not want to go from warming up and running and jogging and things like that to walking into the circle and searching for a feeling. If you're searching for a feeling, it'll take you 10, 15 throws to find the feeling just so you can work on it. You need to get your brain ready to do the things that you want to do before you step in the circle. Okay? So what you're going to see two elements in my warm-up. One is you're going to see physical elements, physical dynamic pieces. But the other thing you're going to see, because this is something that I work on all the time, which is moving your body without using your arms. Because this is another thing, if you watch masters throwers in general, as our legs get weak and less powerful, we spend a lot of time flinging our arms around to get our lower body to do something. We can't do that. As soon as you swing an upper body part, the lower body shuts down even more. So you'll see pieces where I'm doing my workout elements or my warm-up elements with my arms up and straight across. That's because I'm trying to work on specific feel of my feet, but with my arms out and straight, which of course is a piece of the discus throw. And then the last thing you're going to see at the end is you're going to see me do very specific pieces of the throw that I'm getting my body ready for, because I want my hips to be solid because I have a hip injury on the go right now. I want to make sure that I've got my foot positions right, and I want to make sure that the muscles are tight enough so I'm not tearing at things and making that hip any worse. Okay, so that's what you're going to see in the warm-up here. So the first part, I'm just trying to get my ankles going. If you don't have ankle power, you're not going to develop it by avoiding working on your ankle strength and power. So I just do toe walking, heels in, heels out. Just get the ankles ready. At the beginning of the season, I would say for the first month, my ankles hurt just doing this, but it just takes a little while for that strength to build up a little bit. Okay, so I go toes in, toes out, and then I'll do a couple sequences with my arms out. I'm sure we've all found over time, as you get older, you don't care what it looks like when you're doing your warm-up. When you're younger, you're a little self-conscious. These things look silly. I don't care anymore. Nobody bothers me. Besides, this is 5 a.m. There is nobody out. So it doesn't really matter. Okay. So again, I'm just skipping, but I've got my arms out, getting used to the fact that I'm driving my body and finding body positions without getting there with my arms. Okay. Hey, I laugh at me all the time. It's going to be even worse later on when I have to edit this because I'll have to actually listen to my voice for an hour or so while I'm watching myself on video. Okay? So just a little skip, and I've got straight left arm forward, right arm back. Again, getting used to that idea that I'm driving my body with my feet, not driving myself by swinging my arms around. Okay? And then the opposite. Does it really matter to do the opposite? No, not really. I just go both sides. A little bit of arm swing to kind of get the pecs going, get the shoulders going. I've never really had a shoulder injury, so I don't do tons and tons of upper body warm-up. If you have more shoulder injuries or more issues there, I would encourage you to do more of that stuff. My injuries are all lower body injuries, so I spend a great deal of time kind of prepping everything so that my lower body is as ready as it can be without hurting myself. Little bit of side shuffle stuff, again, because you're going to hit in lots of different angles when you hit the center of the circle. There's some very specific positions that you need to hit in discus, or try to hit for the most part. And I try to throw a little bit of all of my, because I train more combined events for the throws pent, less just for discus anymore. I find that I try to put all of those warm-up elements into my warm-up pieces at the beginning. This actually works out well because my drills actually look pretty bad these days because, again, I don't spend a ton of time on discus. So what you'll see is probably more like if you were to record yourself, you'll see exactly what you're seeing here, which is I'll have all sorts of errors on the go. Okay. So again, same idea. Get my arms out. Make sure that my arms aren't moving. Keep them steady. Keep them stable. Now, the next part I'm going to do here, this is what I was talking about with finding positions. You have to be able to stand on your left foot and balance a little bit if you expect to be able to come out of the back of the circle doing that. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to actually implement the full throw by any means, but if you're hoping to, you had better be able to at least balance in this position and have enough ankle power to be able to be in this position. If you can't, consider whether the full throw is the way you need to go. Not a big deal. If the full throw is not going to make you go throw as far as a half throw or a quarter throw or a shuffle, it may not look pretty, but the goal here is as far as you can throw, not as pretty as you can be. Of course, I would lose that game every single time. So again, I've got my arms out. Now I'm trying to get my right hip kind of activated so that it's ready to land in the center of the circle because those first bunch really hurt for me. So that right hip, I'm just trying to put all my weight on it and get my left foot off the ground at the same time. Okay? And these are all pieces of the throw. They're just kind of getting me ready to get into the circle and do the things you're trying to do in the circle. Okay? Now, what you're going to see after this is what I call throw chi. These I would suggest that you do both in the kitchen, any chance you get, but also before you step into the circle. If you can't throw without a discus in your hand, super slow, and know what you're supposed to feel at every point away round in the circle, what are the chances that you're actually going to be able to do that when you actually get in the circle? It doesn't get easier when you go faster. It gets harder to feel things. So try to feel all the pieces of the throw that you're trying to accomplish with no discus in your hand. Feel the body positions. Feel what you're trying to do. Now, right here, what I'm trying to do is in the back of the circle, because of old errors, every single year, I will always battle the same problem, which is the right leg has got to advance before the left into the center of the circle. And then this was a little piece of, hey, I forgot to record my leg swings, so I just threw it at the end on a different day. So forward and back for sure to get the front of the hip going, but side to side. If you don't do side swings on your legs and then you step into the circle and you hit it wrong coming out of the back, what you're going to find is you're going to get a groin tear, and those things do not heal quickly. So make sure that you're doing at least a little bit of these side swings just in case things go wrong. Okay. Toe points forward for the most part. Make sure that you've got some good activation at the top. And it also promotes good mobility because, of course, you're able to get full range of motion when you are working through this before you get into the circle. Okay. So that's the warm up for the most part. Okay, let's move on. So the next series that I want to show you are the imitations, which are that throw chi that I was talking about. This can be any part of the throw itself. Okay. So I'm going to stop the video in places here, and I'm going to kind of show you what I'm trying to accomplish, because it doesn't really mean anything just to show you drills. It's more important that you know what the person who's doing the drills is trying to do. Okay, so right here, this is more back of the circle work because I tend to do a lot more of that because I'm not great at that. I've got most of my weight is on the right foot. My right arm is back, and I'm trying to activate the back of my shoulder because I tend to allow that discus to come forward too much, and I really want to make sure that that discus doesn't float forward in the throw. So I activate the back of the shoulder a lot in this. I make sure that this arm is out and straight, not too far out in front of me. Most of the weight here, and the idea being that I want to make sure that I don't shift the hips this way. I want to make sure that I keep my center of gravity behind this heel, because when I go to swing this leg around, I want to have something to swing against as opposed to being out here and kind of floating and then hoping that I can get my leg around in time. We have got to stay centered over top of our feet for the most part. Okay, so that's just the first little part of this. So I'll get little pieces of that. I'll stop in place. Okay, I'm making sure that my weight is staying behind that foot. I'll make sure that I can balance in that position. I've actually, in that particular one, my right foot came through too late because, again, that's my major error. Here, I'm making sure all the weight is right there on that right foot. I'm making sure that I'm pivoting all the way through, that the hips are coming through, and that arm never advances past the shoulder. Okay? So same thing here. I've got most of my weight there. This is going to come around. Generally, when you're throwing, this is going to be much higher. It's going to be up here. Okay? Right arm back. Left arm isn't advancing. We're mostly in a T position. Weight on the right foot. And then I'm slowly driving so that I've got weight on that right foot the whole time. Because the tendency is that we are going to put too much weight on the left foot and then we have nothing to push from the right. Yeah, doing this kind of stuff in the sand, fantastic. Because it gives you that extra little pressure in ways that you wouldn't get if you're in the circle. Because it's all about feel, right? If you can't feel what you're trying to do, then you're not going to be able to do it slow or fast. Okay. I apologize, this is a reversed video here because just the way my camera films from the front, so it looks like I'm a lefty. So hey, for all you lefties out there, hey, this part's for you. So now I'm doing the same drills in the circle, holding onto the discus, keeping my weight on this right foot. The left is coming down, the heel is down because I want to be able to pivot from that position. Again, I'm trying to get this right side around as much as I can, and I'm trying to make sure that right arm stays out and level with the shoulder. Okay, So it's out and back. I'm going to make sure that the body moves through together. I've got my weight back on my right foot. Okay. Another huge error for me is the discus is too high in this point, in this position. By the way, there's so many more better videos of people online of doing all of this. This is a good one for you to watch because I make so many errors, actually. Matter of fact, one of the best low arm position throwers that I've ever seen is actually in this crowd right now, and he's watching. I won't out him, but he's the guy you should be watching for the right arm position. Okay, so same thing. I've got this, I'm landing on the right foot. I've got weight on this right foot here. Okay, I'm pivoting through. I've got both arms up because I can't create that T position unless the arms are up all the time. Okay, go back and forth on them. Know what I'm trying to feel. Make sure that I've got weight on the foot. Okay, and this all happens so that you're doing the equivalent of probably 30 or 40 throws before you even get in the circle and let go of one. So if you can work all of this to the point that you have done all of this before your first throw, then that first throw will actually be quite good. And technically good. It doesn't have to go far. It just has to be technically good. Okay. Okay. So I'll finish all of these with a couple of standing throws. And the standing throws are not from the idea of trying to throw far now. The standing throws at this point are from the idea of, I just want to feel the same things I was feeling, just like I was just 2 seconds ago in those drills. Okay? So the idea isn't that they go far. It's just that you feel the same things you were feeling before. Okay? This is just more of the same drill. I can probably advance this a little bit because... So this part of the drill is more just getting the hips around out of the back. I have a tendency to dive in from the back. I have the tendency to use my arms from the back, just like a lot of you probably have that same problem. So I try to, at this point, get used to the idea that, okay, arms passive, more passive, not completely passive, active from the right side. So that right foot gets into the center of the circle first. Okay. When I get tired of static positions. Okay. Just more of the same. Okay. All right. So Dean's asking, how deep should your knees be? The eternal question. You're never going to be low enough. And I say that knowing full well that, yes, of course there is a low enough. But not for our knees, there isn't. So low is to the point where you are going to be powerful still. For some of us, it's lower. For some of us, it might be a little bit higher. We would prefer to be lower, but if you know that by going lower, you're not going to be strong in that position, raise it up a little bit. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't go away and go, okay, well, I got to work on this strength in a lower position. But yeah, low is where our knees let us know no more. That's right. We get to that point and we go, okay, well, I can't get out of this position. How could I throw if I can't stand up from here? But that also tells you where you should be looking for your improvements. Your improvements can come from a little bit of a greater range of motion. Does that mean that you can go from like 79 degrees down to 90? No, let's be realistic. You can add 5 degrees, you can add 7 or 8 degrees onto your knee bend to get to be stronger in that lower position over time. And this is where the value in being a master is. When you're young, you grow up, you're getting better every year because you're getting bigger and stronger. You hit 22, 23, and all that kind of falls apart. And how long do you have before the end of your career? You don't have tons and tons of time to kind of make 7 changes and develop specific strength along the way and a lot of technical changes. We potentially, if you start at 40, you could have 30 years. So don't be afraid to experiment a little bit with where you could possibly go. Because if it ends up not going well, you bring back the old technique after a year or two and you apply it in a different way. Okay? So don't be afraid to experiment. We got lots of time. Well, relatively, I guess. Okay. So here's where I want to say you have got to have 2 speeds of throw, just so you know. You have to have a throw speed, like a full speed throw speed, and you also have to have a drill speed. And a drill speed is not a speed that you would normally go for your throw. It's a speed that is slow enough that you can feel the things that you need to feel while still being in motion for the whole throw. Now I'll talk about this a little bit later, but there are zones of intensity. And there's very specific percentages that you're supposed to throw. So, zone 5 would be your full speed, full power throw as far as you can go and as fast as you can go. And then there's zone 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm not going to break it down to that. We don't need that kind of complexity. Really, for us, we need like one speed where we can work on our technique that is not close to our performance speed, and then another speed that is our performance speed. Okay? So try to remember that you have to pick one of those before you throw. You can't, like in the middle of your throw, go, oh, it's feeling good, I should probably go fast. No. Pick whether you're throwing drill speed or performance speed before you start your throw. And you can't do too many performance speeds, because if you do too many in a row, you start to slow down and then you build a slow pattern. And I'll tell you how to not build that in a bit. But anyway, okay, so remember that. Drill speed, performance speed. All right, let's take a look at these specific drills. So I'm going to show you drills that for some, if you are a vet thrower, you're not going to need a lot of these. Well, it would really help if I showed you the screen, wouldn't it? You're not going to need a lot of these. For others, they'll be new to you. But we start with the idea that we are just going to release. And the release comes off of that finger. Okay? So your grip, you're gripping the discus with all 4 of your fingers spread out. The thumb is just kind of resting. If you're a 60 plus male just getting started, do not hook that thumb over top of the edge of the finger, edge of the disc. If you're a woman throwing the 1 kilo disc, don't hook that thumb over top of the disc. It won't go well. Okay? That just kind of sits and balances. We're throwing off of this finger. If you find that you start throwing off of the ugly finger, you're probably trying to lift the disc, which means you need to go back to a drill that just involves just kind of throwing flat or head height throws. So here, I'll flip the disc a bunch of times. I'll kind of throw it up in the air in the circle. You can do this while you're waiting for your turn in the circle, depending on how many people you're throwing with. If you're all by yourself, like I do all the time, for the most part, I just kind of stand in the circle and throw all I want. Again, nobody bothers me at 4:35 in the morning. And then you finish off with just a flip up in the air. And the idea is that it's a relaxed flip. You're not trying to grip the discus. You're just trying to let it roll off of that index finger. Now, there are bowling drills, and they're really good. I'm just assuming that if you've done the bowling drills already, that this is more of a technical preparation for your throw. Okay? So the half stand, we're not wrapping ourselves all the way around. And the idea here is that we are just kind of getting the arm and body in motion and following through on that right side. Okay? So I'll do, in what you'll notice, if you count up all the flips I do here, I'll probably have done 30 or 40 flips inside of my pushes, inside of my other throws. So if you do 2 or 3 before every throw, what you'll find is you will just develop that rhythm to the release. And that's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to develop something that you can use that you never have to think about. Okay? And then as you're swinging back, as you're working through your standing throws, you're just going a little further back every time, a little further back, and putting other elements in. So here, once you start rotating back a little further, you need to make sure that the right foot is where the force is, or the pressure is. And you want to actually make sure that it stays bent all the way through delivery. Now, that won't happen in performance throw, but in your drill speed, that right knee should stay bent right through delivery. Now, I realize when you think it through, you go, well, but Dan, how can I possibly extend my hip as far as I can if my knee is bent? Remember, we're building a model. We're building a model of what your body is doing. It does different things at different speeds. If in the slow speed we keep it bent, what you'll find is at full speed, it'll extend all on its own. Okay? But keep it bent so you can rotate that heel all the way through. Because remember, the instant that your leg is straight, you can no longer push with it. And what you're trying to feel is a full push through the end of the throw. Okay? So again, we're just winding back. Another part of the standing throw you're trying to work on. You're trying to work on the idea that the right shoulder's coming through and that the arm is not coming in front of the right shoulder. That it's just pivoting all the way through with that arm being wide, as if the stick is still there from the stick drill that we saw earlier. Okay. Okay, now we're getting to more of a full throw, and what you notice is that the weight is on that right foot. The weight's going to be on that right foot, and I'm trying to stay back on it. Because remember, in a full throw, as you come into this, you're going to have speed coming into the throw already. So if you get used to transferring your weight onto the left foot in the standing throw, it's even going to more transfer onto the left early when you do the full throw. Okay? So we make sure the weight is there. We make sure that we're pivoting that foot, and we're making sure that that hip's coming all the way through. And in those last couple, I'm just making sure that that hip comes all the way to the front. And those were more kitchen drill-like things that I'm using before I'm actually doing the standing throw. And then I set up, and I try to do the same thing. I try to wind back, weight on the right, and hip all the way through. Okay? Now, all of these, your standing throws, if you are using a throw that is more than the standing throw, so a half throw, three-quarter throw, or the full throw, make sure that your standing throws are low. If you're looking to see how much force is there, how much speed is there, you should be trying to slide it as far as you can, not trying to throw it as far as you can. Because remember, ultimately, we're throwing this discus at a very high rate of speed, but we're trying to throw it at a high rate of speed that way, or that way as far as this camera goes here. It's only going to be at about that angle, and most of your angle comes from the lift from the legs and the pivot from the legs. So in a standing throw, it should be mostly like this, so that when you actually activate your legs at full speed, it's at this rate, this angle. Okay? I can't get all the way over into the screen because it's two different cameras. Okay. Okay. And again, overemphasizing. So I'm falling out of the front of the circle, but the idea here is that I'm overemphasizing the right foot. Now, the wheel is this is a drill that I don't do a ton of, and you'll find the same thing with a lot of drills. Drills that you're not good at, you'll tend not to do a lot of, which is counterintuitive to everything that you do. But that's my reality. I don't do a lot of things that I don't like doing. So I don't do a lot of the wheel. But the idea here behind the wheel is the same as it was with the standing throw, that the weight stays on the right and that the left foot cuts over and down nice and early so that the arms aren't moving a ton. The arms are more of an upright position. You're not pulling on the discus here. The idea is that we've got weight there in the center and the left gets down early and then we just pivot it. Okay? So that's the intention of the wheel, is that you feel that weight on the right foot in the center of the circle. And as much as I don't even like doing the wheel, I don't like watching myself do the wheel either. So let's move forward into some stick drills. So these stick drills are the same drills that I did earlier. Like you would use, I just use whatever. I use the stick that I bring with me that squeegees the circle. And the idea that your arms are up, so you don't have to think about the arms now. You don't have to think about the discus. Now look where my left arm is in all of this. That left arm needs to be in front of you so that the right arm is back. The classic mistake that people make in the wheel is that they pull on the discus. Well, your intention here is to be able to not feel the discus. You can only feel kind of one thing-ish body part at a time. So if you can feel the discus, you can't feel your feet. If you can't feel them, they're probably not doing the right things. Okay? So remember that. You can only really feel one thing at a time, so focus on the thing that you want to actually do the work, which is the right foot, the left foot if it's a position thing. But you should almost never be thinking about pulling on the discus or a lot of things. Well, you shouldn't think of anything with the discus itself. Sometimes you could think about the left arm a little bit, but try to stay away from focuses that are on the right arm. Okay? Okay, I can't watch any more wheels. Let's move back a little bit. Okay, so the half turn is also called the South African drill. So the idea here is this is a step in. Now, I'm going to say here, a lot of us could just use this as our full throw. Because remember, there's two things that we could do to make the discus go faster. One is to develop that separation, which you can do from the half turn. And the other is to develop speed, which you can also do from the half turn. So the nice thing about this, about the South African, is you can put your full foot down on the ground right from the beginning of the throw. So if you don't have the ankle power to be able to stay on that toe and pivot on the toe, then don't be afraid to just set up in the back of the circle. Now, I will set up with my foot outside and I'll stand on the rim because there's not a lot of room for me. So for me to set up inside the circle wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Because I'm a bigger guy, I've got longer legs, I would end up turning my ankle in the front of the circle. But for you, don't be afraid to just start on the flat with this if you aren't really going very far with it. Now the key though is, again, move with your feet. Your arms are just along for the ride. If you can make that pivot with your feet in the center of the circle and then make the final throw with the feet in the front of the circle, what you're going to find is the arms will just snap through all on their own. And you'll see some of these throws look faster than others. And it's not that I'm trying harder, it's just some of them, the timing is right on them. Some of them, the timing is kind of crappy, and then I just force it at the end. And those are the ones that make it that go slow, and they look like they're moving slow. The ones that are going fast here, like that one, I'm not putting any more effort there. That's just a better snap from my feet on the ground, returning that or spinning the body. So these discs, and in this one I'm using heavyweight discs, like overweight discs and regular weight discs for me. That can happen with any of the discs that you use. Okay, so remember that. If you can feel the things that you're trying to do with your feet, then you're going about it the right way because you're avoiding thinking about the hands and pulling with the discus. Okay. Again, another one that looked pretty snappy, looks like I finished pretty quick, and that's because my feet were really good at, both feet were down, and I pivoted both feet, and I was able to bring that right side around. Okay. It took for me to be filming all of these to realize how much I really don't like watching myself throw. So now I'm at a 3/4 turn. This you can also use in the circle. I'm just going to go back a little bit because it's a good setup position. So this just means that you're not in the full throw. So you could get away with this technique with the left foot kind of where it would be for the full throw, but the right foot just back a little bit. You would just shift the whole thing into the circle, of course, if you're actually going to throw like this. But it gives you the ability to just kind of pivot that left foot a little bit and put all your weight down on that right foot. So you don't have to be able to support all of your weight on your left ankle if you use the 3/4 turn. The only one you have to be able to put all your weight on that ankle with is the full throw. Now, for some of us, that full throw to the 3/4 is not going to give you any more speed. So why make it more complex than if you're not going to get more distance? It doesn't make us look cooler. This isn't high school anymore. We do what we do to make the discus go far. So pick the technique that's going to work for you to make the discus go far. Okay. So here, what I'm trying to work on through here is I'm trying to swing the right foot around a little bit. So I'm getting some momentum from that right foot. So I'm doing two things. I'm going to develop some speed just by moving into the circle, but I'm also going to swing that right hip in front of me to be able to get my hips in front of my upper body. I'm still kind of young enough to think that I can get separation. I can't really, but I like to trick myself. So that's what that right foot is going to do for me. And when I do it well, you'll feel, if you sweep that right foot around high enough and accurate enough, you'll find that everything else just kind of flips out at the end. Like it spins out all on its own. Okay? So that's how you know you're kind of getting to the point where it's effective. That one was not. The 3/4 for me is a difficult one, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm not getting a lot of that sweep that's really effective for me. So, I don't know, in a couple of years, maybe I just kind of abandon that and go to just a full speed throw. We'll see how it goes. But we play with technique. I don't have any examples of the full throw on here because it doesn't really matter. You've seen a full throw. We'll get to the full throw in a little bit. This is kind of where I end for the drill. So that is the progression of the things that you can work on. Now, there's a lot of specific drills, and we could be here all day if I gave you specific drills on that. But if you understand what you're trying to do, you can develop and create your own drills. You don't have to go with other people's drills. You just understand that your arms need to be up, they need to be relaxed, the hips need to be in motion, and the feet need to be the drivers of the system. Okay? And those are the basic concepts. All right, I'll just finish this last 3/4 off. Oh, that's the end of the video, this video anyway. Yeah. And we're finished there. Good. Okay. All right, so a couple of things I want to talk about. When we train the system, we are trying to create a discus throwing machine. And I don't mean in the hey, we're trying to make a rah-rah movie here. I mean everything that we do to the body will respond with a reaction. So if we create a catalyst of we're jumping on a regular basis, the body will repair itself in a way that'll allow you to jump a little bit better, or it'll protect the systems for jumping. If we work strength drills, then the body will respond by increasing strength. And that's either through tissue or through coordination. There's a bunch of different things there. So whatever we ask the body to do, it will respond by trying to maintain that system or develop that system. Okay? So as a result, we have to think of ourselves first as a throwing athlete, second as a discus thrower, and then third as a discus thrower of our specific throwing weight for your age category. Well, what does that mean? So if I were to come and I would talk to you about your throwing, and if I were to say to you, hey, what have you thrown this week? And you say to me that you threw 37 meters. That's not what I'm asking you. I want to know all the different things you've thrown. If you want to be a thrower, there's other things besides discus that are going to develop those tendencies. Because remember, it's a tendency that you want to develop. You want to develop the ability to be able to launch a projectile as fast as possible. So you have to be able to throw different things. I also don't mean that you have to train for the throw span. I mean, if you're out for a walk, pick something up and throw it. Not at a house, just in general. You throw a stick in a different way than you throw a stone. You throw all sorts of things in different ways. Get used to that idea, because what you'll find is that you will just naturally get better at planting the feet, snapping the hips, and relaxing the upper body. And that's really the heart of all throws. So you have to be able to do that with a lot of different things. The second thing you have to do is you have to be a discus thrower of all things. So you need to be able to throw, using your discus technique, all sorts of different weight discuses, but also some different items. So you're throwing a metal bar, you throw the bowling pin, you throw a stick. Throw all of these using the same technique that you're going to use for a discus. Again, you look weird when you're out for the walk. That's okay. Wear a bandage on your head. People don't understand. So make sure, though, that you're changing up your discus. Now, this is a lesson that I learned from golf, because I spent a bunch of years just playing golf a lot. That it's well known within the golf club industry that you can only feel your driver for a certain number of rounds. And then after that, you lose the feeling. We become numb to the feeling because we're doing the same thing with the same weight and in the same position over and over and over and over again. Now, the way we fake out that system is we keep changing the stimulus. So we throw a 1 kilo disc, a 1.25 kilo disc, a 1.5, a 1.75, a 2 kilo, a 2.25. Yeah, when you get to the 2.25 kilo disc as a smaller guy or as a female, does it go very far? No. You have a good laugh about it, everybody has a chuckle, and you move on. But what you learn about the overweight disc or the overweight throws is how stable you are. Are you stable in the circle? Because a heavy disc won't stand for you being unstable or unstable. It will throw you around like it's a refrigerator. At the same time, a lightweight disc, a disc that is lighter than your competition disc, that will tell you whether you're actually yanking with your arm at the end or whether you're actually dynamic. Because if you can't throw a lighter discus than your competition discus any further than your competition discus, you're just yanking on the discus. So you're not really able to go any faster. You should be able to throw a lighter discus further than your regular competition discus. And I realize, we look at that and go, well, of course we can. Try it sometime if you haven't tried it, because that's one of those indicators. Now, there's all sorts of numbers out there for you to look at the two and say, as an example for me, because I throw a 1.5 kilo disc. I can just look at the graph and go, okay, if I throw a 1.5 this distance, I can throw a 1.75 this, or I should be able to throw a 1.75 this distance. I should be able to throw a 2 kilo this distance, and I should be able to throw a 1.25 and a 1 kilo this distance. And if I can't throw that full stem or that full range, I ask myself, okay, where's the problem? And there's always a problem to find. Okay, so throwing all different things is incredibly important. Now, how many throws do you throw? It depends on what your capacity is. If you can only throw 10 good throws in a session, you throw the 10 and you stop. If you're not throwing that good technical model that will make you a better thrower, then everything you throw will make you a worse thrower. Yeah, you're trying harder, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going any further. Yeah, Kristen agrees with me. And of course, Kristen and I kind of come from a very similar background. I throw a lot of lightweight weight throw. Yeah, because I'm adopting this philosophy, but it goes further. I like watching things go further. And I can throw a lot more of them. I throw the 25-pound weight, and I can throw it 4 or 5 times hard, and after that, it's like, okay, well, this thing feels really heavy. But I can throw the 20-pound over and over and over again. And of course, it goes further and makes me feel better about myself. And that's really what all this is all about. Yeah, for sure. Helps it, like working on radius and hammer, because you don't have that extra pull, so it's almost like you can release the shoulders a little bit more. And that's what you find in discus as well, is that if you're throwing a lightweight disc, it gives you that opportunity to just kind of open up, because it's not going to yank on your shoulders nearly as much. So it gives you that opportunity to get outside of your base a little bit and feel some different positions. Okay. One more thing I want to talk about before I move on to the looking at the different adaptations for masters throwers. And that's this idea of sliding for distance. Put this into your training regimen. If you don't know how far your furthest slide discus is, you're not really kind of going about this the right way. You could, just because you can throw far and then it stops and doesn't slide anywhere, doesn't necessarily mean that's your only indicator of how far you're throwing. You should be at times working on how far can I slide the discus. The tendency is always, okay, I've thrown so far. If I throw a little harder, it'll go further, right? Okay, we've already gotten to that point. We realize that it never works. Oh, it's only relaxing that allows it to go further. But if we can throw with more linear force, then what we'll sometimes find is we've spent a great deal of time trying to lift the discus when we don't really need to, especially on a windy day. We throw flat and low. That's a different skill entirely, and you need to have that in your repertoire, especially on a windy day in a competition. Okay, so remember that slides for distance, you should be doing those, I would say, once every couple of weeks and just going out and going, all right, how far can I slide this thing? Okay. How many total throws? It depends on how much you're training. If you're training to build capacity, you have the ability to throw a lot more. So over time, over the season, you should be able to throw more in a practice than you should at the beginning. Does that mean that you need to exhaust yourself every time? Heck no. But I can honestly say at the beginning of the season, if I'm throwing 12, 13, 14 throws, and that's all I got in discus. But by the end of the season, well, when I was only throwing discus, I was throwing, and I mean like as a master's, I was throwing twice a day because I'm a teacher, and in the summer I get bored, so I go out a second time because I also am obsessive compulsive about a lot of things. So I go, okay, well, I can work on some technical things. Brian, why do you need to throw 15 times? If I had to guess, it's because you haven't pre-developed the model before you stepped into the circle before that first attempt. If I had to guess, I haven't seen you throw, and we can talk about that another time, but my guess is you're not in the mindset to throw well. And that doesn't mean far, but well before that first throw. So spend some time doing the drills before to get to the point where you step into the circle and go, I'm not guessing here. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Okay? Does that help at all, Brad? Okay, cool. All right. Adaptations. So I'm going to show you, I took this video of our June 6th meet. So we're early in the year, but so I'm not doing this to critique the throwers themselves. By the way, they've all given me permission to show you this. So, and I'm not making fun of anybody here. This is just, I'm going to show you some things, and the things I'm going to show you, I'm impressed because they really work well for those particular athletes. Because remember, we're trying to develop two things. We're trying to develop separation, and we're trying to develop speed. Now, over time, it becomes more and more difficult to develop separation. So different people develop speed in different ways, right? So let me get this started. And I have very specific things that I want to point out for each person. So this is Longin. And Longin has a background in handball. So he played a lot of handball. Matter of fact, he played professionally in Europe before he came here. And as a result, you look, oh, sharing the screen again. Here, let me do that for you. Here's Longin. So Longin is a very snappy guy. So as a result, he's able to use that snap and that speed. Now, can he control at all times? No, not necessarily. But this isn't necessarily about control. If you're looking for control, this is not the sport to be in. This is supposed to be out of control. So watch Longin's throw here. Longin uses a full throw. And he, for the most part, is generating just a lot of speed. And that's okay. Okay. So the idea is he's got a big range of motion out of the back. Gets it going. And then it's a lot of arm throw at the end, but he generates some speed at the beginning. Okay, so he gets all of his speed right through here, right through the back of the circle, and then he gets into the center of the circle and he just kind of unleashes on it. Now, I think for Longin, from this point forward, if he were able to continue rotating his feet, he would be able to snap that discus another probably 6 or 7 meters further. So he gets to here, and now the arms take over. But if he were to continue to pivot right here, if this foot could go and this foot could go and drive the action, he throws about 40 meters. I think he could throw to the mid 40s to upper 40s, even still, just because he's that snappy of a guy. Yeah, so Bill makes the point, you got to be ready after 2 warm-up throws. That's the minimum that they will give you at an international competition. But that doesn't mean necessarily that you'll be ready to go after 2 throws. So anything you can develop in your routine that can get you ready for those first 2 throws, you got to make sure it's in your repertoire. Okay? All right, so that's Longin. Longin's, like I said, he's a snappy guy. He has the ability to throw. Oh, I know why. He has the ability to throw. And you can see, even without his lower body doing much in the front of the circle, he's still significantly fast. So this is Yuko. Yuko is developing some speed. Here, I'm going to put her on a loop, and we can talk about it as we start. Okay? Just give me a second, because we don't need preparation motions. Okay, so here we go. So she steps back and she's developing some rotation. So I'll just put it on a loop here and we can just watch from here. So she's essentially using the half turn. She steps back, puts her weight on that toe, and she can actually pivot on that toe. But she's made the accommodation that she can't make it all the way around out of the back of the circle, and that's okay. The biggest thing she's doing here is she's using her feet to make the motion, not using the hands a lot. She could still pivot a little bit more at the end, and she could probably keep that left arm up. So watch her left arm. Her left arm kind of pulls in a little bit. If she kept that a little bit higher, I think she would snap out really well at that point. Okay? But she does a great job here. Okay, I'll go past, and our next thrower is Bruce. Okay. Bruce, again, using the 3/4 turn, Bruce has got a lot of power. Okay? So he's able to pivot off that foot, and he's able to actually make a lot of these motions very, very powerfully. But he does that same thing as we all tend to do as we get older. As soon as he gets to the front of the circle, he pulls with the hand. And what that does is it shuts down that right leg. So watch this. I'm going to pause this in the center of the circle. Let me just click through. Okay, so he's generating speed, not a lot of separation, but then again, our backs aren't flexible anyway. He gets to here, great position. His arms out, he's down, and now watch how long it takes for that right foot to turn. It's now off the ground. He's pulling with the right arm. If he continued to pivot with that right foot, you see the power he has, even though he's pulling on the discus. There's a whole lot more to be had right there if he could just continue to pivot the right foot as opposed to yanking on the discus when he gets to the center of the circle. Okay. All right. So here's Pat. Pat and Laura are 1 and 2 after each other. They train together, so they have many of the same adaptations. Pat uses what I call the shuffle. And he uses it very effectively. Because what you're going to see here is that Pat generates a huge radius as a result of shuffling in. So he's not using speed. He's using almost all separation. And as a result, he gets a pretty good result out of this. So watch this. He'll step in, completely able to rotate back. And now he uses a complete radius. You watch. Oh, I forgot to pause this one. Okay, so it's hard to predict when he's going to start. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here's what I want you to see. Watch this. Look at that position. He's got complete radius from that left side. There's his pivot position. There's his radius right there. So yeah, he hasn't used the full throw. But what he's done really well is he's gone all the way back. He's got a full range of motion. He's got a left side pivot, and he's got a great right side radius. And look at that. The right foot was still on the ground, and the discus is gone. Now, does that mean that he doesn't reverse? No. He still kind of comes through at the end. Here, he still kind of comes through at the end, but he gets great push on the discus. Now, Laura does the same thing. I know Laura's watching here, so hi, Laura. Is it going to keep going? Okay, it's going to keep going. Okay, so Laura does more or less the same thing, just not from that corner position. Okay, so shuffles in, gets great range of motion, and rotates out. Still really good. Okay, so I'll just frame by frame this for you, because here you can see the difference between Pat and Laura. Even though Pat pushes with that right foot, Laura gets to about here and starts to pull with the discus. So as soon as you're pulling with the discus, this foot stops working. So let's see what her foot does as soon as she stops pushing with the foot. It comes straight up in the air, and she's actually kind of falling left a little bit because she didn't push that right foot that way. If she'd pushed and pivoted out, then that radius would be the same as Pat's was with that strong left side. And her left side is pretty strong. Don't get me wrong. She's in the right position. But if she'd pushed there rather than pulled there, she would have gotten a lot better radius, and it would have gone that way, not necessarily that way. Okay, so 2 different applications of the same thing. One of them is just a little further along than the other. Oh, I'm going the wrong one here. Here, let me do that. Okay, who do we got next? Oh, Gord. Nope. Never mind. Sorry. Laura again, because it's on a loop. Okay, so Gord's coming up next. So Gord has a really, really fast upper body. If you see Gord throw in real life, it's actually impressive how snappy Gord is with his upper body. But he tries to overuse that with the pull. So I'll put this on a loop and we'll see the difference here. Again, it's hard to predict when somebody's going to start if they do the arm swing. Okay, so watch this. So Gord's upper body, super snappy, super quick. But as a result, he overuses it. So when you watch that right foot, as soon as he pulls with that arm, the hip stops. So his hip doesn't even get level with his right hip doesn't get level with his left hip, and the discus is already gone. Now, don't get me wrong, Gord gets a great result out of this anyway. But if he were to rotate out from the foot, that arm would then be added onto the speed of the hips, as opposed to the hips are just kind of along for the ride. And there's the difference. But he does get good range of motion. You can see, his back is a little bit tender. His back is a little bit limited for motion, but he still is able to pivot on his feet to be able to get that range. And I'll skip past. Okay, so there's a good example of the pull. Those adaptations, try to use each one of those, because again, we got tons of time. If one doesn't work for you, try a different adaptation. For a while, I was playing with a 1.5 turn because it was fun as a masters, not as a regular age athlete, because there's downsides to that. But 1.5 turns is actually it's really interesting to try to work with. It requires a lot of balance, and clearly more balance than I have because it never really worked out. But interesting adaptations.